fascinating and horrifying concept of Bion. So the question, Julie, going back to what you said about hopelessness, is that the higher the factor of envy is, the more it challenges the ability of the mother to be able to deal with such a baby. When we say a baby is unsoothable, we don't necessarily mean that a baby is completely, totally, absolutely, forever unsoothable. We mean that there are gradients. There are babies who are easily soothable, right? Those babies that are very gentle, they cry a little bit, mother picks them up, and everything is fine in question of minutes. While there are those other babies that get so terribly disturbed that they may keep up the mother all night, and this happens all along, and the mothers do say, this was an unsoothable baby. It was very difficult, right? So this about envy.
I have a question. I think that by making a distinction between the envy as a feature of the psychotic part of the personality, as opposed to envy, the sentiment, which is used in more everyday language.
Let's call it a factor rather than a feature. And I say factor, feature is all right,
yeah.
But since we're going to talk a little bit of the second period, and Bion calls that a factor, factors and functions, we get already into the language of what follows, right? Yeah.
I think that making that distinction is helpful because it demarcates the concepts from the everyday. But I have never been able to get my head around the concept of a baby being envious.
Right.
And I know that that's a criticism that a lot of people have of this particular concept. And so I wonder if there is another word that captures the depth of whatever it is, the factor that Bion's trying to capture in this word. Is there an alternative to envy?
I think unfortunately not, because the alternative could be the death instinct, but the death instinct is such a highly abstracted concept that it says so much that it says nothing at all in the end. Anything could be death instinct, ultimately. You see, while envy, although it doesn't refer to the sentiment of I envy you, that would be a very benign envy, right? When I say, oh, you have such a lovely car, I envy you, that has nothing to do with the Kleinian or the Bionian envy, because if I had that, one of the things, and possible evidence could be that I didn't even notice that you have a car. I just blanked it out, right?
Yeah.
That would be, I mean, I destroy in myself the perception of that makes me envious. Therefore, I behave as if that object doesn't exist, was deleted, was split into multiple particles and became, for instance, a poisonous gas that is now poisoning me. So I, let's say, am envious of your car in this other way, right? Of course, I don't perceive the feeling of envy at all, but something strange happens in the psychotic part of the personality. Every time you come in, I sense that there is a bad smell that is intoxicating me, and when you go away, I feel dizzy and bad because I felt that something, some gas, I think, right, is poisoning me. That would be an outcome of this other envy on the psychotic part of the personality.
That the patient or the person who has has envy as a factor
yes,
of his personality is projecting to you, and you then experience that. That's what you're saying?
No. Oh. What I'm saying, if I, the patient, right, envy her, my therapist, for the car or the home or the office or for the knowledge, let's say, in this other way, not the envy, I feel envious of you, that would be fantastic, right? I would be cured if I'd be able to say I envy you for what you know or for your car or for whatever, right?
It wouldn't be an action, it would be something to talk about.
Exactly. It wouldn't be a factor of my personality. It would actually be an emotion that I am aware of and I can put into words. As a factor of the personality, right, its task is the silent task of the death drive, and therefore what I do, one possible psychotic outcome would be that the factor of envy brings up in me the function of fragmenting the object that I envy in such tiny bits, and that splitting is the function. The factor is the innate envy. The function in the personality that does something due to the factor is, for instance, destroying the object into such minute particles that the object becomes invisible, is turned into a gas. Right? I'm thinking psychotically now. This is me, the psychotic part of the personality. Therefore, the object that I envy is no longer there to be envied. It's been turned by the function of my personality called minute splitting into a gas that I now feel is poisoning me. But I have not the least idea wherever that came from, right? But it can trace back. If you have Bion as an analyst, let's say, he could trace back through your associations, your psychotic productions, and so on, what has caused what.
But how is this innate factor of envy different from hate? I mean, could that be another term?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes, hate could be another term, but we would run into the same problem as with envy, because hate is also the name of a feeling. I hate you, I envy you, I love you, you see? So we are using terms that are names for emotions to describe something that in the psychotic personality is not perceived as an emotion. It's a factor of the personality that is terribly destructive, deathly destructive, right? Spoiling the object, right? Yes. Even Shakespeare.
At the same time attacking the mind, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the
yes.
worst part of it, right?
Absolutely. I think that what she's adding here is very Bionian and important, that this factor, envy of the object, right, attacks not only the object, but the part of the senses connected to the organ of consciousness that can perceive the object. Therefore, the part of the mental apparatus is being destroyed, split off, and evacuated out.
And the part that can link, the linking.
Well, the linking is,
I
exactly.
mean, that's what gets attacked.
Exactly.
Because it's the linking of two separate entities, the consciousness of the baby and then this outside entity, and that's what's envied.
Exactly. Yes.
And the factor, well, I don't want to go too much on this, but the factor is about the child's intolerance that the mother is separate, does not match in one-to-one correspondence all of the needs at every moment of the infant. So this factor is about intolerance of difference, I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that I don't know that it's the intolerance of separateness, maybe, but it is the intolerance that the mother has something
Right.
that the baby needs and the baby can't do for himself. And
But then the baby
So
has to
it's-
bear something, though, that the baby prematurely can't bear, though.
Yes. Like.
Pardon?
Say it again, O'Donnell. She didn't hear you.
So the baby prematurely has to bear something that the baby can't bear, whether it's separateness, whether it's the level of dependence, whether it's frustration, whether it's envy. So if I'm the baby and I have all those feelings going on, I don't have, I'll say, a well-developed psychic apparatus yet. I need the help of my mother therapist to help me grow that within myself.
Mm-hmm.
So the capacity is there to grow that. That's how I think about that. And so how does a baby, I guess for me, when I think about adult patients who have envy in the way that we're speaking about it in an infantile, primitive aspect to the adult patient, my experience is that they envy an illusion.
Aha, okay.
So, for example, if the patient, through projective identification, believes that I have all the knowledge in the world,
Yes.
I'm very clear that I do not.
Right.
But they locate that in me at that point. And so what they envy really is an illusion.
Right, an idealized object.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, let us stop there
Okay.
because we are going to get back to that hopefully at the end of the night, right? But for the time being, I think we understood when Bion says envy, what he means. It's not the name of an emotion, it's a factor of the personality, and it is the expression as a factor of the personality of the death instinct, being that death instinct is just this intellect, this abstract concept that doesn't say much, right? Because the death instinct would express itself in suicide, for instance, which is not envy, it's another, or could be envy of life altogether, and then you commit suicide because you hate life itself because life is life, because there's something creative in the process of growing, thinking, speaking, relating, etc., etc. The ultimate outcome of that is that you just say, I'm done, finished, I don't play this game anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's much later. The first experience of the death instinct for the infant is what we're talking about. That's its first phase. And how is that, like right at birth that this encounter happens?
Well, it is, and again, this is a matter of names, and certainly all psychoanalysts or creative psychoanalysts who have coined new concepts, Freud to begin with, run into trouble with words. When Freud said that little babies were sexual, of course, the Viennese Victorian Society were horrified, and the last thing they wanted is to walk on the same sidewalk like Freud. The story goes that people who knew him and hated him for saying that babies were sexual, when he walked on a sidewalk on the street, would cross to the opposite sidewalk because they didn't want to get anyone near him, right? But he used, when he said babies were sexual, he didn't mean sexual like a sexual adult. He didn't mean that a baby is a pervert that wants to rape the mother. But he did speak, for instance, of the Oedipal longings of the baby. Well, that was quite a problem. And then when Melanie Klein spoke about the destructiveness of babies, she ran into the same problem. Now the people were already trying to settle down and to get to grips with Freud saying that the babies were sexual. That was already bad enough. But now comes this lady and says that not only that, they are destructive. Well, that was just the end of the story, right? I mean, every time, but you have to resort to words, right, to express something that doesn't have words, something that is much more primitive. Baby sexuality doesn't have words. Why did Freud call it sexuality? Well, because babies saw that babies felt erotically attracted to the possibility to suck, and that there was some pleasure in the sucking itself, aside of the need to get food from the sucking. For instance, they would get food when they sucked the breast from the mother. But then they loved to go on sucking whatever they could suck, and there was no food in that, but they would love it. And you see babies with the pacifiers, right? There's nothing coming out, but there's a pleasure of sucking. So Freud said that pleasure I will call